Greetings. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View. On tonight's show, Dr. Akili discusses the effects of diabetes and the higher risk of COVID virus complications among Blacks. Dr. Akili will be joined by Ilia Rashad to discuss food shortages. And lastly, Ilia will discuss UFOs and the government's plan to release reports. Opening statements began yesterday in the Myrtle trial of Derek Chauvin. Prosecutors described the oath taken by officers and their role in the community.
You're going to learn in this case a lot about what it means to be a public servant and to have the honor of wearing this badge. It's a small badge that carries with it a large responsibility and a large accountability to the public. What does it stand for? It represents the very motto of the Minneapolis Police Department: to protect with courage, to serve with compassion. But it also represents the essence of the Minneapolis Police Department approach to the use of force against its citizens when appropriate. A sanctity of life and the protection of the public shall be the cornerstones of the Minneapolis Police Department's use of force. Compassion, sanctity of life, cornerstones, and that little badge is worn right over the officer's heart.
Yesterday, the CDC director spoke about the rising number of COVID cases and stated that, quote, she was scared.
That was one of those times when I have to share the truth and I have to hope and trust you will listen. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to lose the script, and I'm going to reflect on the recurring feeling I have of impending doom. We have so much to look forward to, so much promise and potential of where we are, and so much reason for hope. But right now, I'm scared.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan stated on July 4th, 2020, that America would not conquer this virus. This week, Nashville, Tennessee experienced an enormous amount of rain in a short period of time. Take a look at this clip.
The same system that brought tornadoes to the south, dumping heavy rain here in Middle Tennessee. Just take a look at this road, still completely underwater, creeks and rivers overflowing. More than 100 people had to be rescued. Overnight, the powerful winds are taking out trees and power lines across the Northeast. This motel evacuated in New Jersey after suffering significant damage. The storm traveling up the East Coast after wreaking havoc in Tennessee. Record rainfall tormenting parts of the state. Nashville under a flash flood emergency. Cars completely submerged. At least 4 killed. More than 130 people rescued from the floodwaters. This morning, many roads now impassable, buckling from the storm.
Nashville received more than 7 inches of rain over the past 48 hours. That is the second highest 2-day rainfall total in our history.
We have been warned to watch the weather and the calamities that are to come. The minister recently spoke about the influence that celebrities have on us to take the vaccine.
When I tell you don't take the vaccine, television comes on. Radio comes on. My wonderful artists and sports figures come on, showing us their courage to take the vaccine. Some of you are being used and don't know it. Your fame, your celebrity, your influence, your money. Now you're being bought and paid for the destruction of your people. This is another form of the great betrayal.
Yesterday, we focused on increased gun violence in the U.S. and the recent incidents of mass shootings.
So, Dr. Clark, what do you think is causing these continuing mass shootings to take place in America?
This is the question that all of the Americans are asking, folks who live outside of the United States. Everyone's wanting to know why is that we having these mass killings, these mass shootings. But the mass shootings, they're more frequent than one would imagine. You just now gave the number of how many mass shootings have taken place already this year, which is actually 66 more mass shootings than we had at this time last year, year 2020. What stands is that a mass shooting can be defined as 4 or more people being injured or fatalities in an incident, excluding the shooter, him or herself. So what explains this? It can go down into a number of issues. It can be culture. It can be guns availability. All of these, etc. I'm a political scientist by training, but the reality again is such that folks look to the social sciences and say what is the problem, and those of you who come out of your arena, the faith-based arena, but say, wait a minute, it's a matter of loss. They've lost their faith,
Yes,
and so it's a multitude more than just one response.
We also covered the America's Communication Commission complaints filed after Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's performance at the Grammys.
Has the American public become this proverbial swine because of the content that it is constantly fed?
Absolutely. You know, we are what we eat, and if physically we're eating trash, then we're going to produce obesity. We're going to produce disease and a death-like condition. And so, you know, man is what his thoughts are and what his heart is. And so, spiritually speaking, our artists have a duty and a responsibility. And now what they're doing is feeding filth to popular culture. And so what's going to be produced? We're talking about mass shootings earlier, but there's a consequence of this type of behavior, not just financially, but we're talking about the degradation and the devaluing of the social fabric. We're talking about single parent homes. We're talking about, improper male-female relationships, destruction of the whole family unit, destroying of the community, of a nation. I mean, this has major implications. And when the woman doesn't understand her value as a woman, and that, she is beautiful in the sight of God, and the man does not understand the value of that woman enough to protect her from herself, then what we see is a civilization that has fallen like Babylon, like Rome, like Sodom and Gomorrah. And the wrath of God, he's looking upon this. But if we understood and we adhere to see, spiritually speaking, because we're not just talking about physical or money or material, but it has a whole big implication. So we got to pay attention to that.
Our NNV contributor, David Muhammad of Trinidad and Tobago, provided us with an international update from the Caribbean.
So we are doing our best to put information out there into the public space about the issue regarding trustworthiness, including the 1996 Kano, Nigeria Pfizer vaccine issue, where the government of Nigeria sued Pfizer for $8 billion. And Pfizer got away with paying $175 million to members of family, to the 200 children that they experimented on. So in Caribbean, there's a lot of politics over this. You keep hearing rumors about certain business agencies, private firms and corporations that have access to distributing vaccines. And then we're hearing also on the other side of vaccines being offered by China and India. India have already given, I think, close to 500,000 vaccines to different Caribbean countries. And then the government and then the opposition get entangled in these back and forth debates over the sincerity in the positions that they take. So there's a lot of politics involved, but we're doing our best to keep the information out there in the public space.
On Friday, we spoke with Dr. Abdul Halim about the recent meeting between America and China and their relationship.
China in and of itself has its own domestic and international policy, and so does America. And they may clash, and its two truths may not be mutually exclusive. So as America accuses China of abusing human rights and mistreating the Muslim population there, And then the Chinese turn around and accuse them of mistreating black people and probably Native Americans and diminishing its own democracy, as we've seen in the Georgia laws and the 43 states that are passing these voter suppression laws. These are two truths, but they're not mutually exclusive. So they're both guilty, and they both should be warned from the voice of God in our midst, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Messiah, that they're both in trouble and they need to humble themselves lest they face the calamities that God has in store for them.
We also spoke with Charles Muhammad about the push for a plant-based diet.
Well, tell us what's behind the propaganda and the push for a plant-based diet.
Well, if you study closely, you see the usual suspects prop up from other so-called depopulation agendas. And there's a lot of money being put into these fake meat companies to put out these products to the general population. There's a worldwide push. And these mega corporations, these fast food companies and supermarket food production companies are all in together to now make the whole planet plant-based, or in a lot of cases, vegan. So we believe that it is part of an agenda that these foods are not very healthy and they will deplete the immune systems of many of the people who eat them.
On Sunday, Sonia Muhammad shared her personal insight, experiences, and testimony of interacting with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Is there any one thing or anything that comes to your mind about an experience with the minister that you want to share that you haven't had the opportunity to do so? If so, you can now.
I had a chance to, on my way out the palace, I was on my way, we was getting ready to wrap up our meeting. And I was telling the minister on my way out, I said, Brother Minister, I said, I love God. I always have, even before, coming into this journey. I said, and I asked God one day, God, why can't I meet you? I want to see you. I want to meet you. I said, and Brother Minister, he ran me right into you. And he looked, how he'll kind of squinch them eyes, and he said, I am not he, sister. But one day, we will all get a chance to see him as who he is.
Wow.
Last week, we spoke with NNV News contributor Nina Shabazz, who shared her interview with Justin Muhammad on his move to Zambia.
Why did he select Zambia out of the 56 countries to choose from? And
Zambia is 3 times the size of the UK and has a quarter of the population. There's lots of space, lots of virgin land, and you can buy, as we did, somewhere in the nature of 250 hectares, which is like 550 acres for about $5,000. And that's really good producing land for that kind of money. I mean, sometimes the roads can be a bit problematic, and depending on where you buy, if you're buying in the city or whatever, it can be more expensive. But we've been able to make some really good deals. And it's just the price of getting started. Once we get the machinery out here, we've got quite a bit now, but once we started getting our machinery out, purchasing land, actually doing business in copper mining and whatnot, the cost of getting in, although it's high for me as an individual, as a group it was really doable. The natural resources, there's so many: manganese, copper, timber, great land to grow crops, whether it's soybeans, maize, fruits, vegetables, bananas and whatever. It's really great, and they've got a really high water table. So although it rains for like 4 months and then doesn't rain for the rest of the year, the amount of water that's under the ground makes it a really fertile place. So yeah, that's why Zambia, the opportunities were good and well priced.
Let us pause for announcements from our sponsors. When we return, NNV Weekly contributor Dr. Akili will discuss with us diabetes and the COVID-19 virus complication on Black lives. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
This is Sister Sajida Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajida House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajidahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
People with diabetes are at higher risk of COVID virus complications. Black men and women are more likely to die of diabetes-associated health problems.
Here's a statement on page 159 of book 2. He says, if you are a sugar diabetic, stay away from sugar, for sugar will make you a diabetic and you will never know that you have it until you indulge in too much sugar and starchy foods. Eat more protein foods and eat more fish and that which water produces of life other than scavengers of the water. We have scavengers out there in the water and we have them on the land. Stay away from that kind of animal or life that lives on nothing but filth itself. And do not be a slave to your eating desires. Be the master of what you should eat and do not allow the desire or hunger to be the master. So the two very, 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 and I would say probably 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 very important points, but for this conversation, very important points. Being a diabetic is 100% dependent on what you put in your mouth. Let's start there, because those of you who go to physicians and they don't change your eating habits, but just a few statements like stop eating starches and do this, that's not good enough. You have to have the type of information that you need to go to work, get to an investigation, start assessing and evaluating what it is that you're doing every day that causes your sugar to be 235. Why is it 137 one day and 250 the next day? Why is it sometimes you go all the way up to 425 and then sometimes it doesn't move at all? Have you ever stopped and evaluated what's the difference in what you did that day that produced that reality? We got to get back to understanding what's happening with this body.
Joining us to discuss this is holistic physician, Dr. Akili Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Yes, ma'am. How are you this evening?
Good. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Thank you.
Good. For our audience who may not know what diabetes is, what is it?
Well, simply put, diabetes is a problem of the body being overworked and being overburdened. And the average American and average person in a lot of parts of the world where diabetes is prevalent do sedentary jobs. So you're sitting most of the day and the amount of food that you're taking in is overworking the body, is too much for the body. That's why you gain weight. And just to use a quick analogy, it would be like a parent, mother or father, with 4 or 5 or 6 children, and all of them inundate you with a question all at once. Or like a car that you buy, it has a tow limit, and you exceed that tow limit in a car or a truck by putting too much in it and towing too much behind it.
Now, with the effects on the body that diabetes has, can you give us some information as some of the symptoms that one might experience?
Yes, excellent question. So typically, how people usually will present and usually get diagnosed with diabetes is a combination of a few things, mostly being fatigued, excessive urination, typically at night. Sometimes they have problems with like swallowing and just other things that occur when a person is dehydrated. Of course, sugar draws water in the body like a sponge does water. And so when your sugar is high, it's being pulled out of the tissues, urinate a lot of water into the toilet. And so the body winds up being dehydrated and not able to function as it should. Of course, the body is 75% water. So it just makes sense that if you drain water out of the body and the body is no longer in that percentage that it should be, then things start to go south.
Now, with dehydration, how does diabetes affect the immune system?
Yeah, so absolutely. That's an excellent question. Of course, very appropriate to our time that we're living in now, with everybody hearing about preconditions in this COVID infection. And diabetes is, of course, the one that most people are worried about. So when you have high sugars running around in the body, it's doing a lot of damage to small blood vessels and small nerves. Those are the two, I would say, aspects of the human body that keep everything alive: small blood vessels and small nerves. Those are being damaged by diabetes and those high sugar levels. And so that's why typically you'll have a diabetic, after having it for years, they will lose their eyesight. They start having kidney problems. Sometimes they get cold extremities and may have their feet, toes, legs amputated. And so diabetes destroys the body in so many different ways. And at the same time as doing it to those tissues, it's doing it to the blood and the immune cells. And then on top of that, you have the extra sugar that's running around in the body that also feeds infections. And so if you have a viral infection or a bacterial infection, they need sugar as well. And so when you have high amounts of sugar rolling around in the body, it feeds an infection and causes an infection to grow quickly and take effect over that body pretty quickly. And so that is the main reason. There are many others that we could go in depth, but those are the main reasons why it affects the immune system greatly.
Okay. How would one who currently has diabetes address it during this pandemic?
You know, that's a applicable question, right? I think the greatest response is that all of you who have diabetes know you should be doing something different. You know there's certain foods you should not eat. You know there's certain things that you should not do. Please get starting on those, because to have yourself in a bad state of diabetes during a time like we're living in, it's really putting you at a very high risk. And so staying away from starchy foods, high sugary foods, potatoes, bread, rice, and especially the white varieties of those: white bread, white rice, white sugar, white flour. Those have been extracted, bleached. That's why they're white. That's not the natural color from when they come from the earth. And so those foods are not only difficult for the body to process, but they have been devoid of all nutrients. So it's empty calories that you're putting in the body. And so you gain weight, you put all this starch and sugar on the body, which causes you to add fat, but yet you have no nutrients to allow the body to function correctly, which is additive to what we just finished saying about the depleted immune system. And now you don't have the ability to heal the body. So get to work on the things that you know you need to do: exercise more, move around, drink more water, eat more proteinaceous foods, eat more fruits and vegetables. I did say fruits. The fruit sugar does not cause diabetes to get worse. It may make your sugar go up for a little while, but the nutrients in good fruit is much better for you than eating those starchy white foods that I just finished mentioning.
Now, in terms of the pandemic, are people with diabetes at a higher risk of COVID virus complications?
Well, the numbers certainly seem to say that, based on the statistics that I have seen. And then, of course, based on what I just finished saying, theoretically, yes, because again, when your sugars levels are high, when they're not controlled like the body has the capability of doing normally, your high sugar levels will feed infections, a bacterial infection, a viral infection, a parasitic infection. Any type of infection in the human body needs a fuel source as well. So sugar running around in the blood is not bad. That's a normal aspect of the way the body works. But when they're elevated, and especially highly elevated, it can lead to feeding things more than the body. And typically those things are not necessarily good for us. So yes, diabetes and especially uncontrolled diabetes is definitely going to increase your risk of not only getting this infection, but more than likely the infection becoming out of control or just having wreaking of havoc on your system and causing a lot of problems because of the infection.
Now, Black men and women are more likely than whites to die from diabetes and many other conditions. Why is that?
Well, I would say that most of it is because of misinformation. You know, we continually go to the wrong sources for our information. And I'll just pose an idea to anybody here. How many of you had a grandmother, a mother, an auntie, an uncle, some family member that had diabetes when you were a small child, and then you see that person die when you get older and they still have diabetes? They're still taking medication for that diabetes. Obviously, the medical community of this country is not interested in helping people heal. So it's time for us as a people, a very ignorant people, and then we go get our information from sources that have never proven that it's a good source of information. So my suggestion would be start to think through what you do. And then I can't go by without saying that book behind me, How to Eat to Live by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, speaks about solving diabetes without medication. And so I think that's a very, very, probably something that most people we reject at first, but it's something that we should really think of. If your body went without diabetic medications for many, 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 many years, why all of a sudden do you have to be dependent on them? Changing your lifestyle, doing some things differently could pose the answer to your problems. Unfortunately, I think the way that we as Black people were treated in slavery and the way that we still have that syndrome affecting us today, we tend to reject information that doesn't come from our open enemy.
That's correct. Now, one more question before we take a minute for our sponsors.
Yes, ma'am.
Should I take the vaccine if I have a pre-existing condition of diabetes?
I would say absolutely not. There isn't, let me first say that for all of the vaccines that are now available in the United States, I sat and listened to the emergency use authorization program that goes from like 9 in the morning till 5 in the evening. I listened to every one of them. I listened to the presentation of the companies that were, the presentation from the companies that were offering the vaccine. And I listened to all of the so-called experts and doctors from around the country that were doing the investigation of these vaccines. And I did not hear one so-called expert or one doctor that was satisfied with the safety profile of these vaccines. And so when you see a doctor promoting that this vaccine is safe, promoting that this vaccine is good for us, there is no information to support that claim. And so I wouldn't suggest anybody take the vaccine, and especially not a person with diabetes. I already spoke about the fact that your immune system is probably not at its optimal because of diabetes. And now you're going to take an investigational vaccine that has not been completely evaluated to the point that we can say it's safe in any capacity. And so putting another burden on your body, I believe, is going to wind up having dire effects later on down the line. So please, if you're diabetic, instead of running to getting this vaccine, run to the gym, run to the park, run to the grocery store and make better decisions rather than jumping to something that is being posed to us as one thing. But in reality, we're going to find out not too long from now that it's completely different than what they say.
Thank you, Dr. Akili, for your insight on this subject.
Yes,
we're
ma'am.
going to pause for announcements from our sponsors. After we return, Dr. Akili will be back with another NNV contributor, Ilia Rashad, to speak on the food shortages among the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. As we renovate and restore the former home of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we have recycled the old copper gutters and downspouts and created a 1 ounce 39mm coin made of 100% pure copper. Each coin is professionally graded and has its own barcode and registration number. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
As the new strain of COVID virus circulates across the U.S., households are experiencing increased food insecurity, seeking assistance from food pantries.
According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, a year later, 35 million people struggled with hunger in 2019. When they close the books on 2020, the number is expected to be 50 million people. And there is this. Numbers crunched by both Northwestern University researchers and the Brookings Institute show nearly 30% of households with children are food insecure.
Do you want sour cream?
That translates to nearly 14 million kids.
I never dreamed that we would be doing this on a regular basis.
People are just in more need these days than in normal times because of the pandemic.
I have a family of disabilities, and so does he. So we're trying to come together and help each other. And it's because of the COVID. The reason why we have had a decrease in income to provide for our families officially.
Joining the discussion on this topic, we have NOI researcher, entrepreneur, and agriculturalist, Ilia Rashad Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Greetings. I don't know why my camera just started going off.
That's fine.
Sorry about that.
There you are. I see you now. All right. My first question is to Dr. Akili. Welcome back, Dr. Akili. Dr. Akili, as the new strain of COVID virus circulates and infection rates rise across the U.S., households are experiencing increased food insecurity, seeking food assistance from food pantries, and filling grocery carts to the brim in a new round of panic buying and defensive purchasing. What food items and non-perishable goods should people stock up on to sustain themselves and their family during these perilous times?
Yes, ma'am. So I would say, the first thing that I would suggest would be navy beans because of the nutritional value that they have and the capacity for storage. You can store them for periods of time without them spoiling. Other things that we could also consider would be, of course, canned foods, but there's a period of time that those would no longer be good. Dried fruits, seeds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, things of that nature. And in a time like we're living in, when you are considering what you are storing, the health and the quality of that food needs to be taken in consideration as well, because we don't want to be in a situation like this where food is short. And then when you do put food in your body, you're putting food that is null and void of nutrients. And so that's one of the things I think we should really consider. Navy beans, other things that we can use and that we can store that will give us the quality nutrition that we need. So if there are sparing meals, you're still getting the type of nutrition that can serve you well.
Thank you. Brother Ilia, according to a 2016 study from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, honeybees pollinate about $15 billion worth of crops each year. As a beekeeper, can you share with us the importance of bee pollination to food production, especially in these times of food shortages?
Absolutely, absolutely. The honeybees and bees in general really give us a sign of how we should live and become more sustainable for our own livelihood. We see where honeybees live, act, and organize in a very unified fashion, where they defend themselves. They know how to go out and forage for resources that they need to not only feed themselves, but to build their own infrastructure. So as food shortages continue to rise, unfortunately, it prompts us to to see the need to become more sustainable in our own food supply. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us the blueprint. He gave us the solution for this back in the 30s. And so when we look at pollination, essentially what pollination involves is that many flowers, particularly plants that produce fruit and vegetables, many of them require some type of pollination, whereas the male part of flowers and plants has to meet with female parts of those flowers and plants. And many people like myself became surprised to know that plants actually can have male and female parts.
Right.
So pollination essentially is the transfer of pollen, which is typically the male parts, to female parts of plants. And sometimes it's done within the actual plant, which becomes self-pollinated. And sometimes the wind may help blow those pollen particles to the other parts of the plant. And more often, we find that certain creatures are naturally designed by the creator to become pollinators. And when we look at bees and the honeybee, these are tiny engineering machines who do just that. And it's only when these plants are adequately pollinated can they produce the fruit and vegetables to be as healthy as we would like for them to be for our consumption.
Now, Brother Ilia, many of our viewers just learned that you are, in fact, a beekeeper. And just before the break, we were speaking with Dr. Akili about diabetes. Is raw honey a natural antiseptic? And can raw honey actually aid in regulating blood sugar?
I'll start with the first question first. Honey does contain, is a natural antiseptic. It has its antiviral properties, antibacterial properties. And in short, honey is basically what is made by the bees as they consume the nectar from different flowering plants. They consume that nectar and mix it with certain enzymes in their abdomen, or as the Holy Quran says, in their bellies. And they use this to produce a beverage that in it is healing. It does have those healing properties: antibacterial, antiseptic, antiviral. Now, honey is sugar. It is just so happens to be natural sugar. because when the honeybees derive the nectar from flowers, that nectar is sugar. It's in its more sucrose form, but as it digests it and mixes with those enzymes, it gives it a more kind of transfers it into a more glucose and fructose form, where they dehydrate it to become the honey that we have. Now, honey is sugar. It's just natural sugar, and it's sugar that has natural nutrients in it. So when it comes to should people with diabetes consume honey, I would defer to some of our experts like Dr. Akili, some of our health professionals, because after all, honey is sugar. It's just natural sugar.
Dr. Akili, what are your thoughts on honey being a raw antiseptic and potentially regulating blood sugar?
Excellent job presenting honey, because I agree with everything he said. Firstly, I'll say that honey is the only sweetener that is suggested in that book by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the only sweetener that is mentioned in the Quran being good for us. So definitely, regardless of your medical problem, you want to stick with what God says first. But absolutely, I suggest honey to all of people that trust me to help them with their diabetes journey, because although, as my brother Ilia said, all sugar can make your sugar go up. But the question is, what sugar is going to feed your body and help you heal? And honey is definitely one of those things. It has many nutrients, many amino acids. As my brother said about all the things that it does to help us fight infections, those are things that a diabetic needs. So diabetics should go away from typical sugar, especially white sugar. But honey is definitely something that I suggest for those healing reasons.
Okay. Now, in anticipation of food shortages, Dr. Akili, businesses have begun rationing items and stockpiling goods. Bloomberg.com said it really does have everything to do with what's happening with COVID cases in any particular community. How are the rising COVID cases affecting food security?
Well, I think early in the pandemic, we saw a lot of workers of these so-called food places or these farms that were not allowed to come to work because the environments weren't safe. And so we saw a lot of wasting of food. I remember seeing pictures of many gallons of milk being turned into the dirt and potatoes sitting out rotting and other things like that. And so I really believe that we have to put this in its proper context. You know, in the day of Noah, the majority of people weren't listening to him. In the days of Lot, most people weren't listening to them. If you go to the Quran, in the time of Tammuz, the people weren't listening. And so the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has left us with a very wise leader, and that's the Minister Louis Farrakhan. And a lot of the information that he's giving us, in general, we're not taking it to heart. And he talked about the fact that we needed to become more independent and stop relying on our enemies to feed us and to clothe us and to shelter us. And so now we're going into the times where we're in the type of situation where that is proving to be true. The government and state and all these federal organizations that are supposed to look out for our health are obviously not capable of taking care of us. And that's why there's so many people that are winding up unemployed, winding up seeking food from somebody else rather than having a plan to go to the earth and getting it themselves. And so unfortunately, I would say that the first answer would be the rejection of guidance that is coming directly from the God himself.
Right. Dr. Akili, I want to thank you for joining us for 2 segments today. Before we go, can you tell us about your Ultimate Wellness Group show, which airs tonight?
Yes, ma'am. So I have the Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday, which is every Tuesday at 8:00 Eastern time on the Ultimate Wellness Group on YouTube and the THEE Ultimate Wellness Group on Facebook, where we talk about health subjects and discuss and have good interaction. I call it the place where you can come to get news that you can use so that you can take this information and apply it to your life. And if God say the same, that you will improve your health and continue on your healing or health journey. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity and the platform.
Thank you. Let us pause for announcements from our sponsors. Ilia Rashad will be back to speak with us on UFOs and the technology of these crafts. We'll be right back.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline reads, "Injustice yesterday, no justice today." After many high-profile cases, blank political statements are made. Public tears, street protests, and cries of outrage are expressed, but no one goes to jail. From George Floyd to Emmett Till, after the pleas and promises, black people still get little to no justice. The question is, why? What have we learned? And can this injustice system ever change? Page 3 of the Final Call covers the full story. This FCN volume number 25 edition features the middle page article by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. The message is entitled, "Justice, a Prerequisite to Life." To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call cover report.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
News media reports of unidentified flying objects, also known as UFOs, describe it as superior technology with the ability to travel at supersonic speeds without a sonic boom.
Frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Some of those have been declassified. When we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that, frankly, engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom. So, in short, things that we are observing that are difficult to explain. It's not just a pilot or just a satellite or some intelligence collection. Usually we have multiple sensors that are picking up these things. And so, again, some of this are just they're unexplained phenomenon. There's actually quite a few more than have been made public. So I think it'll be healthy for as much of this information to get out there as possible.
To discuss more on this topic, we are bringing back Brother Ilia Rashad. Greetings, brother.
Thank you. Thank you. Greetings to you, beloved.
Let's get right into it. The Pentagon and government intelligence agencies announced in December that they would release a report into UFO sightings within a 180-day timeline. John Ratcliffe, former director of national intelligence, said it was in the public interest that information on UFOs is released. Do you believe the government is looking out for the best interest of the population regarding UFOs?
No, I don't. And the reason I don't believe that they are looking in the best interest of the American people or the general public is because they've had certain information pertaining to these crafts, and they know, when I speak of they, I'm talking about the government officials, particularly those in the upper echelons of government, CIA, FBI, military intelligence. They have known since at least the early 40s about the reality of these crafts and what they are capable of and who represents them. And it's been a secret ever since. So I don't think that the government would all of a sudden be interested in divulging the truth to the American people. I do, however, find it very interesting that it was fall, August 4th of last year, I think that's summer, fall, of 2020, that the Defense Department made it somewhat official that they were putting together a task force so that the UFO information could become to some degree disclosed to the public. And I think it's interesting because that was literally 1 month after Minister Farrakhan's Criterion address, which was July 4th,
Right.
where he openly before the world called and summoned these wheels to appear. And lo and behold, within hours after his address, we found these unidentified wheel-shaped objects flying all over the place, particularly in the area where he delivered his address, the Chicago, Michigan area. And that lasted for a few days after his address, where we see these wheel-shaped crafts directly respond to their representative in the Honorable Minister Farrakhan. So I'm certain that the government is very aware of who he is and the truth about these planes. And I don't think that whatever they try to divulge to the American people, I'm very reluctant to believe that they will be truthful with it, because they haven't been truthful all these years.
Right, right. Now, Disclosed.tv reported that Trump's director of national intelligence said that the U.S. has secret evidence of UFOs breaking the sound barrier without a sonic boom and performing moves humans don't have the technology for. Is it true that humans don't have this technology?
Not the type of humans that are a part of this world. However, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as some may or may not know, was the one who introduced this reality of what people call UFOs to the modern world. This he was directly shown by his teacher, who he claims to have been taught by God in person, in the person of Master Farrakhan Muhammad. Interesting that most of the scholars and critics leave this very important part out when they're discussing this topic, but it was Master Farrakhan Muhammad who is responsible for these wheel-shaped crafts and the gigantic, what we call the mother wheel, the gigantic wheel-shaped craft that he literally showed physically to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the early 30s, and gave him the most intricate and intimate details concerning these crafts, those who pilot and control them, what they're capable of, and their overall purpose on this earth or in the world. And that purpose is to show that there is a new, more superior power that is on scene, and that is the power of God, whose presence is in the real world.
Right. Now, is the government more comfortable with attributing superior technology to aliens than Black people? And why that is?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you know, and we would say it in a very crude but realistic way, white folks do lie. And if there's one thing that they have consistently lied on and about, it is the Nation of Islam and the UFO phenomena, because these two realities are inherently intertwined. And it's the truth concerning these crafts and the Nation of Islam that they do not want known to the public, which is why this topic has been placed above top secret by government and military intelligence. So even though they arrested and interrogated the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad because of our relationship to these planes back in 42, ever since then, they have attempted to cover up this reality, and they've commandeered the narrative by attributing these phenomenal crafts to something otherworldly, to some type of fictitious aliens that they would make up. You know, we don't find where any aliens have ever done anything that have been interested in human affairs. No, that reality comes from right here on this earth, but it's the reality of a real God who has made his presence known on this earth.
Right. Now, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, in his book, Message to the Black Man, revealed the reality of God and of the wheel-shaped plane known as the mother of planes and her 1,500 baby wheels. Will the U.S. government ever acknowledge who is really behind the now identified flying objects?
I think, Sister Rosalind, that you know the answer to that. I don't think they will ever fully come forth. After all, they won't even tell the truth about the representative of that plane that's in our midst, and that is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. They won't tell the truth about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who brought this reality to the world. So it's very unlikely that they'll truly divulge the outright truth. But that's okay, because the Nation of Islam challenges the world. The Nation of Islam challenges the government, the CIA, the FBI, all your military intelligence. Minister Farrakhan has literally challenged the world to try to disprove his connection to these planes, which are very real. But we've noticed that even his staunchest critics don't even take him up on this offer. And in fact, they won't even take up his students on this offer. I've tried to, converse with scholars and journalists and so-called UFO researchers, and almost to a man or woman, they've shied away from even engaging us on this topic. And the reason is because the Nation of Islam unveils the truth and proves with empirical evidence what these planes are and who represents these planes. And that their time is almost up. So they're trying to hurry up and divulge whatever they want to divulge to try to keep the people away from the truth.
Now, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad also taught his followers about the reality of these objects, describing them as human-driven planes that have been engineered by scientists who have knowledge of science and mathematics far beyond our understanding. Who are these scientists and how are they selected?
These scientists are human beings. Let me say that first. They are not aliens from outer space or any other world or anything like that. However, these are human beings who are highly, highly groomed in the ways of science and righteousness, because they are actually taught and groomed under the tutelage of Almighty God in person himself. So quite naturally, those who come up under such order, such paradigm, would have capabilities that your average human being that you see on the street or in school or at work certainly has not tapped into yet. But these planes only give us a glimpse of the true human potential, because the fact that we see these planes, and these planes have been observed and in some cases encountered doing things that the highest intelligence of this world cannot fathom, this gives us clear evidence that there is a power, and it gives us evidence of true human potential. But these are scientists, are human beings. They are the same ones that the scriptures often refer to as angels. Angels, so we're taught, are not some apparitions in the sky or some Cupid looking people with wings on and all of that. No, these are human beings. They just so happen to be human beings of enormous capabilities and a higher intelligence than those in this world are accustomed to.
Now, Brother Ilia, very quickly, what is the status of the UFO document?
Thank you. The documentary that we have started on is in progress now. Of course, many things were just put on a halt as a result of the pandemic and the widespread of the coronavirus. But we are now picking things back up. We, this week, just confirmed some of those scholars in and outside of the nation who've agreed to share their commentary and their thoughts about the UFO phenomena and its relationship to the Nation of Islam. And some of those scholars happen to be not only outside of the Nation of Islam, but some happen to be white, and one even is a well-known white Jewish scholar. So I think this will be very interesting to see how things develop with this documentary. So just stay tuned.
I will stay tuned. Thank you, Brother Ilia, for joining us today and speaking with us about UFOs. Thank you for joining us today and tuning into NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Rosalind Parks with NNV News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.